Hello everyone, welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you're a returning viewer. I hope you're all doing very well and having a lovely weekend. My name is Anna and I am a knitter and maker living in the Seattle area in Washington in the US. And today I'm going to talk to you all about what I've been working on throughout the month of March. So yeah, that's the gist of it. I'm just going to get started instead of rambling. I'm feeling like in a little bit of a funk today, so apologies in advance if the energy's kind of off, but I'm hoping that by filming this video it might help me feel a little better because I love talking about knitting and it always makes me happy. So yes, we'll start with what I'm wearing. This is a sweater that I knit in 2021. This is the Swept Away pattern, which is actually a free pattern from Drops. And it's kind of this all over cabled. It's a saddle shoulder, so the cable runs all the way down from the shoulder. This was the first time I'd done a saddle shoulder and I really like this construction. I love how the cable detail runs down and then across the yoke. This was actually not my first cabled sweater, but it was my second big cabled sweater. And I really like it. The problem is that I made this with some reclaimed cotton yarn and I naturally dyed the yarn with black beans. And it looked very different when I first dyed the yarn than it does now. I'll put a picture of it so you can see how much the color has faded. One, because it's cotton, and two, because black bean dye is not one of the more color fast of natural dyes, and so it's really faded out, and it's kind of like just like the tiniest hint of blue now. So I think I need to dye it again, and I'm just trying to decide what color I want to dye it and what dye I need to use. I probably need to buy some fiber reactive dye to use on this because it's cotton and you can't treat cotton the same way you treat wool when you're dyeing. It's a whole thing. But I guess if that's something that you're interested in, I would be happy to do a video when I do the over dyeing process of this sweater, just to show you what it looks like to use fiber reactive dye on cotton and how the process differs from like using acid dyes on wool or natural dyes on wool. Yeah, I think I'll probably just go for blue because that's what it was before and I really liked it. So if that's something you're interested in, let me know. I'll be happy to do it. But yeah, I really like this sweater, honestly. The fit is really nice. It has these fun balloony sleeves. The only thing is that it doesn't have any short rows in the front or back, so it's a little like short in the back and long in the front kind of a thing. And originally the neck was pretty loose, but I put an elastic in it to help it fit a little bit nicer. But yeah, I like this sweater a lot and I don't wear it as much as I should. I probably would wear it more. Will wear it more once I fix the color. There's also just like a lot of straight ends that need to be weaved in, and you can see that this skein I used at the top of the yoke was very different than the skein I used at the bottom, so hopefully that will kind of blend itself out when I re-dye the sweater. But anyway, that's a little bit about the sweater that I'm wearing. I don't know that I've ever talked about this sweater on my channel, so maybe in like one of my very earliest videos about knitting on this channel. But anyway, I really like it. It's cute, it's fun, and I do like a cotton sweater a lot, especially in this time of year, kind of transitional time, because I'm getting a little bit tired of wearing my heavier wool sweaters, which I'll talk to you a little bit more at the end of the video as I talk about my plans for upcoming things. So anyway, with that, let's get into finished objects. Some of which you've seen before and some of which you haven't, which I feel like is pretty on par for me. I usually show you like a couple things I've been working on for months and then like one random thing that I had never even spoken about before but decided to cast on and finish within the month. But the first thing that I want to show you is something I'm very proud of. It's a long process, and it is my half and half triangles wrap by PURL SOHO, which I knit in unspun yarn, one strand of unspun yarn held single. This is the Hillesvåg unspun roving that I bought at the Hillesvåg mill in Norway, just outside of Bergen. It's a lovely little place if you ever find yourself in that neck of the woods. So yes, this is my half and half wrap. It was a labor of love for sure. It's so much knitting. It's so big and such a small gauge. So I held one strand of the unspun yarn single, which I would say is a little bit lighter than like a plotulopi, and I've never knit with Knitted In before, but it's a very soft, very lightly spun, like I've knit with a lot of unspun yarns at this point, and some of them are much denser than others just when they're wound up. So like the Hillesvåg is definitely the least dense yarn that I've used. It's like the staple length of the fibers is not super long. It's not very densely extruded into the pencil roving. So it's very delicate. It's very soft. It's very lovely. And I really enjoyed working with it, but it's definitely not like I wouldn't say it's a beginner's unspun yarn. I would say start with like a Plotulopi or a Briggs & Little, something that's a little bit more robust before you move on to something like this. But yes, this is my half and half wrap. I made the smaller size because I was a little concerned about how much yarn I have. In the end, I probably could have cast on a few more stitches. I don't know if I would have had enough to make the big size. I'm glad I didn't make the big size because I don't know that I would ever have finished it. So I made the smaller size actually calls for, let me step back. I'm sure you know, but this is a free pattern from PURL SOHO. And it comes in 2 sizes. There's a large and a larger. The large is actually tells you to cast on 190 stitches. I cast on 200 just to make it the tiniest bit bigger. And the larger size is 260 stitches. I probably could have gotten away with like 230 stitches and had enough yarn, but anyway, I digress. It's still very large. Like this is a good sized piece. It's generally square. I don't know why, but the black square is significantly larger than the white square. I also noticed when I was knitting it that the black yarn was just like a little bit more plump than the white yarn. I don't know. They're obviously from 2 different sheep because none of these, the Hillesvåg unspun yarns are dyed. They're all undyed. So like this obviously came from black sheep and this came from white sheep. I'm assuming they're Norwegian sheep. But you know, different like hair, the fiber quality of the wool between 2 sheep is going to be different, especially when they have different levels of pigment in their wool and blah, blah, blah. But all that to say is this is not like a perfect square, and I even blocked it out. I stretched it quite a lot to make when I blocked it because I wanted it to be as big as possible. And so you can see like it's a pretty transparent fabric, I would say. But the black side definitely has a little bit more drape, and I don't know, it just behaves a little bit differently, which is kind of odd. But anyway, it's also a little squishier on the black side than the white side. But all that to say is that it's not perfectly square, but I still really like it. I use it a lot when I'm working from home, just like as a lap blanket, or I'll wrap it around my shoulders like this. It's very cozy. It's very warm. It does wrap all the way around like a scarf, but it's not huge. Like I can tuck it into itself and it'll hold. And yeah, I really like, am I covering the microphone? Okay, no. I really like the contrast of the black and white. I think I'm like, as I'm knitting this year, I'm really liking high contrast things like this. I love my Badger and Bloom sweater by Anne Wenzel, which I did in kind of a higher contrast, dark gray, kind of gray, light gray. And as I was watching Claire from the Pearlwise Knitting podcast, and she just knit a really beautiful colorwork sweater in kind of a black and white contrast. I don't remember, it's one of the Caitlin Hunter patterns, but I really like that. I'm just really drawn to kind of the higher contrast black and whites right now, so I'm loving this. I think it's great. We're kind of in the season in Seattle right now where it's a little bit too chilly, even when the sun is out. Like it's like high 50s, maybe low 60s if we're lucky, Fahrenheit. And so like when the sun is out, it feels great, but if you're in the shade, it's a little bit cold to go out without a coat. And I've made that mistake a couple times this week. And so I think I just will need to be wearing this to help bridge the gap between like not quite coat weather, not quite not coat weather. Because it's so warm. It's just airy, super lofty wool. It's very warm and cozy. So yes, I did German short rows for my version. The original pattern calls for wrap and turns, but I just prefer German short rows. I find them a bit easier. So yeah, I would say there's some spots like knitting with unspun, which I feel like there are some spots where the yarn got pretty thin, but when I was knitting it, I was sure to like put a lot of tension on those thinner spots to make sure they weren't going to break. And I don't feel like there are any spots that are at risk of breaking. So I don't regret my yarn choice at all. I am a little worried about pilling with this yarn because it is quite so soft, but I think it's robust enough because it's like a rustic wool that it's not going to pill terribly. I mean, knock on wood. It might, but so far I've been using it most days, just kind of like throwing it around on my desk or whatever, and it's been fine. So I'm really happy with it. I don't know that I will be like rushing to knit another one anytime soon. I know this pattern is like known for being addictive and people knit multiple of them, but I am not someone who enjoys endless amounts of mindless knitting. Like this this was really a slog for me. I know when I last talked to you, I wanted to finish the white triangle by the end of February, and I think I had started like a good chunk of the black triangle. But like, so I would say I enjoyed like the middle 50% of this project. The first 25%, when it was like these really, really long rows at the beginning, took me like 3 months to get through just like 30 rows of this. And then it was really, like, I really had to discipline myself to finish this, because once I got past like half, like not even halfway, when the rows are getting longer and longer, it's just like exhausting. And you're like, how much longer can this go on for? And I just did not enjoy it as much, the knitting process. And I'm very much a process knitter. So I love the final product, and it was fun in the middle when you could kind of see the triangles coming together. But for the most part, it was not my favorite. So I love kind of the concept of it, like the short rows to make the squares. I think I would do this kind of construction again. I'm not sure I would do it on this scale. Like, I think I would like it so much more if I did almost like a patchwork of smaller triangles, like a bunch of these triangles. I'm just gonna hold over here so you can kind of see what I'm talking about, but a bunch of triangles just like this, or squares like this with two smaller triangles, and then sewed them together. I think I would enjoy that much more, especially if they were like different colors. You could even do them in like kind of a quilty way. I think PURL SOHO actually does have a blanket pattern that uses the same technique with smaller squares. I think I would enjoy that much more than doing the giant guy all over again. I don't think I would want to do the striped version either. I don't like the color. I don't know. I like the simplicity of the original half and half wrap with just the two big blocks of color. And I would love to have another one. I do not want to make another one. So if I have any friends, I know my friend Francesca loves this pattern, and we joke with each other all the time about how like I should just do all of her color work and she should just do all of my endless stockinette, because they're both valuable skills, but we just prefer one or the other. And so maybe one day I'll knit a colorwork sweater for Francesca and she can knit another half and half wrap for me. But in the meantime, I'm gonna enjoy the one that I have, because it's plenty and it's really all I need. And it's gonna keep me warm for a long, long time to come. So yes, all that to say, I'm glad to have this. It was a nice experience. I felt bonded with the knitting community because so many people have made this pattern, but I'm not in a rush to make another one. So yeah, that's finished object number one. Finished object number two are these socks, which I showed you. I'd finished one, I was on the second one last time. These are the Cape Gingham socks, which is a free pattern on Ravelry. And I knit these with Sunness Garn Sisu, which is a superwash yarn. I think it's 75-25 merino nylon blend, maybe an 80-20. And I love the look of them, and they're really comfortable. But this was my first time ever knitting superwash socks, which may sound surprising, but I'm, you know, silly in this. I've knit most of the socks that I've made. Actually, no. The socks I made for James for Christmas were superwash, but they did not have the same properties as this. These socks grew significantly when I washed them. They are now, like, when I finished them, they fit fine. When I've washed them, I could probably take this entire repeat, like this bottom repeat, out, because they're super long on my foot and they're also really loose in the leg. So I don't know if it's just a superwash yarn thing or if it's the gauge that I knit them on. This is a fingering weight yarn that I knit with a 2.5 millimeter needle, and I did a 70 stitch circumference. And I think if I had done a 60 stitch circumference, it would have been too small. And because of the pattern repeat, like I couldn't have done 65 or something. So there's not really a way I could have changed the fact that the leg is a little bit too wide, unless I had like done some decreases down the back or something. But I'm trying to decide if it's annoying enough for me to go and rip the toe back and kind of redo this, take out these last two repeats. I'll show you what I'm talking about, which I hope you're ready for more like weird holding up my foot content that we've had. But like, do you see this? This is my toe right here. Like, this is not normal. And so if I want them to be tight on my foot, like I have to pull them up quite fine, and they fit, like, but when I put them, you know, when you have socks that are too big and you put your foot in a boot, that's part of the reason I wanted to make these with superwash merino, because I could wear them in my boots. But when you put your foot in a boot that's with socks that are too long, it always like rides up, and so the heel of my foot ends up like way too high. It's very frustrating. So I'm just trying to decide if they would be too tight if I pulled these two repeats out. Like my toe is now here. That seems like it would work. I don't really want to have to go back and re-knit on these right now. Like, it's kind of annoying. The other thing that I'm finding kind of annoying is I think I've worn these socks twice, maybe twice. And they are like really felted on the heel. Do you see how much pilling and stuff there is on that fabric? Like they look really worn for having only been worn twice. So let me know if you've knit with this yarn before and what your experience was with it, because I'm not feeling super great about it at the moment. I know that Night Sky Knitting has used this yarn before and she didn't love it but that's because she knits left-handed, and so it was like untwisting on her. I don't remember if she spoke about like the wear of the yarn, but I'm a little disappointed with the wear of the yarn. And I have a good amount. So I had, when I bought the yarn for the socks, I also bought it in Norway at a lovely little yarn shop in Bergen called Strikkelykke. It's very cute. But this was like in a bargain bin. Each skein of these, or ball of this yarn, was 220 kroners, which is like $2.50. So I bought 2 balls of the dark green and 1 ball of the light, this is not green, 2 balls of the dark purple and 1 ball of the light purple. And I still have like, I cracked into the second ball of the dark purple, but I still probably have 40 grams of that left, and I probably have 25 of the light purple left. And then I have 2 more full balls of a yellowy kind of mustardy color of this sock yarn. And so now I'm trying to decide, like, do I want to use this again for socks or what? Because it's behaving funny and I'm not sure how to like size it for my foot. I don't want to use it for gifts if I feel like it's going to grow. So if you have any like pro tips for knitting with sisu, let me know. But I love the look of these socks. They turned out so darling. So I think I'm just going to end up having to take either 1 or 2 repeats out of the foot of these socks just to make them fit me a little more nicely. Or maybe I'll just wear them as house socks, but I wanted them as like actual socks. So let me know what you think. If I should just leave them or if I should just rip it back. I would appreciate your opinion on that. But yes, they turned out really cute. I like this pattern a lot. It's a free pattern. It's very accessible. It's very easy to adapt and modify size-wise. And yeah, would recommend the sock pattern. Would not, at this moment, recommend the yarn. So yes, that is finished object number 2. Finished object number 3, I talked to you guys a little bit at the end of last month because I showed you the yarn for it, but now it's finished and the pattern is published and it's out. So this is the Victoria scarf by Icy from ORSA Knits, who also has a lovely channel here on YouTube and she makes great videos. But this is just this little kind of bandana kerchief pattern that I tested for her and she recently released. And it's so cute. I wore it the other day to work. I'll put a picture of my little outfit. I felt like a little sailor girly. It was very cute. But yes, this is it. It's just kind of a triangular bandana shaped piece of fabric with these elongated kind of cables on it. I think that it's a really cute design. I think the color that I chose leans more towards fall than spring. And generally the way that I think about texture and knitwear is I feel like cables are for fall, winter, and lace is for spring, summer. So this is definitely going to be more of like a fall, wintry piece for me, but it's still fun to wear. And like, if I wanted to wear it in the summertime, I would not be afraid to. And like, I can wear it in my hair, like a little thing like this, and it's cute and very versatile and very fun. And I really liked knitting it. It was super quick. The yarn that I used is a vintage yarn cone that I bought at a thrift store in Seattle, just outside of Seattle. It's 100% wool, fingering weight. The pattern calls for Cardiff Cashmere, which I've never used before. But looking, and it's Cardiff Cashmere Classic is described as a DK weight yarn, but yardage wise, like I think it's about 200 meters per 50 grams. That puts it in the fingering weight category to me. And I had no problem getting the right gauge with a fingering weight yarn and a needle size below what the pattern calls for. So I don't know if Icy's just a tighter knitter than I am or what. Actually might have been even a little bit above gauge, like having fewer stitches per 10 centimeters than I needed, but it turned out great. It's highly modifiable. You could definitely make it much bigger if you wanted more of like a shawl, kind of like a Sophie shawl vibe, but pointy and with cables. I think it's a great pattern. It's really fun, quick knit. Would be great for gifts. So that's just a quick plug for the Victoria scarf by Icy from ORSA Knits. It's very lovely, very cute. I love this navy blue, and I have I think I have another like 500 or 600 meters of this yarn, left, and my plan is to use it to make, hold on, let me get the pattern in front of me while I'm thinking about it. My plan is to make the Luna Tee by Carissa Lamb, which I'll insert a picture of here, but it's this really pretty broken rib t-shirt, but kind of with a high like mock neck. I think it's very pretty, and I think it would work really well for this yarn. Like, this yarn has great stitch definition, and it would show the broken rib texture really well, I think. And it would be a great transitional piece and a good like work piece for me wearing to work, because it's a little bit fancier, it's a little dressier, and I'm not sure what else I would do with this amount of yarn. I want to use it for like a wearable piece, like a garment is what I mean. So yeah, that's my plan for the rest of this yarn. I'm not sure when I'm going to get around to using it, but stay tuned for that, potentially in the future, or not. I could change my mind. I change my mind a lot, which I'll talk to you again a little bit more later when I'm talking about my kind of upcoming plans. But yeah, that is my Victoria scarf. Okay, my last finished object for the month is something that you haven't seen, but something that I really liked working on a lot, and that I really enjoyed, and I'm really excited to talk to you about. So this is the Lonely Leftovers vest by Wool & Beyond. I really like it. Hold on, I want to tell you, oh, by Eileen Berlin. She's a Swedish designer. I follow her on Instagram. She's very darling. She's really cool designs. But this was one of my favorites that I had seen and kind of had my eye on and had it in my queue for a while, but I wasn't sure what yarns I wanted to use, because I definitely wanted to use up some of my scraps, and but I wasn't sure what combination I wanted to use, because this is kind of knit at like a bulky weight gauge. Honestly, it's like a 14 stitch per 10 centimeter gauge. I think I might also be a little bit above gauge. I think I have fewer, I have 13 stitches per 10 centimeters blocked, but it's a vest, so I wasn't super precise about it. But anyway, I really liked this pattern, and I was just like sitting in a really boring meeting at work one day, and I like had a light bulb go off in my head, because I don't know about you, but when I'm sitting in boring meetings, I'm often thinking about what I want to knit, or what I am knitting, or like working through knitting things in my brain. I was like, oh my gosh, Anna, you have all of these unspun yarn scraps, or like weird quantities of unspun yarn. Because after I finished this, I had a good amount of the white, like not a good amount, but probably like 30 grams of the white left over. I have black left over as well, but that didn't go into this project. But I have some scraps left over from a couple Plotulopi projects I worked on previously. So I made the Cathedral Dome sweater in 2021 with Lopi, Plotulopi held double, and I had a bunch of leftovers from that project. So I used those to make the Aros sweater by PETITEKNIT with Plotulopi held single, and I still had leftovers after that. And I was like, they were just laying around. I didn't know what I was going to use them for. And then I had found some unspun yarn at an estate sale. It was like a white and gray marl. It was like a white buffalo or a Briggs & Little unspun yarn. And so I just kind of had it laying around, and then I decided that it was going to be this, and I love it. I wore it the other day. I think it's so cute. I'll show you a picture of me wearing it. I am really happy with how this turned out. It was kind of a labor of love. This is my first real attempt at doing like a nice fade, because I had enough yarn. I wanted to use up all the scraps, and I had enough yarn to kind of like, the colors that I had were all of these browns, and they kind of faded through each other. So that's what I got to with this. But anyway, and then I went through kind of my scrap yarn. I have my yarn stash in a bunch of drawers, and I have a drawer that just mostly has scraps in it. And I thought that this light green was the perfect pairing for all of these browns that I went with. I think it's so cute, and it adds like a really fun pop of color. And it kind of makes these darker, moodier browns look a little bit more springy. So the construction of this is really cool. You knit this back panel, and then you do this I-cord, which for me turned out less like an I-cord and more like a band, but I like the way it looks. You can see on the inside that like the I-cord didn't I-cord all the way, and I think it's because this calls for like a sport weight yarn, and the yarn that I used is actually more of a worsted, and so when I knit it on the needle size that it called for, it was like, I don't know, it didn't work the way maybe it was supposed to, but I really like the way that it turned out. Anyway, so the back I started from here and then faded across this way, and I was knitting with one strand of white buffalo / Briggs & Little unspun yarn, one strand of the Hillesvåg, and then I had one strand of a really light Plotulopi. It's not white, but it's kind of like white with some light brown fibers blended in, so it's more of like a cream color. And then obviously I ran out of the cream, so I started fading in this next the next one in my colors, and it turned out a little bit darker. So I kind of tried to make it look interesting. And I think it turned out fine. And then you pick up at the shoulders and knit. Actually, no, then you do the I-cord, and then you do the back section. Then you pick up at the shoulders and knit down the front. And I'm not telling you like stitch counts or anything, so I think that's fine. This is a paid for pattern, but then you knit down the front and then you join for the underarms and knit the whole body. So you can see that I knit the back in this more gray toned one the whole way down, and then for the front I had this kind of more brown toned. So throughout most of this I'm holding 2 strands of white and 1 strand of brown together until we get most of the way down the body. So this is all 2 strands of white, 1 strand of brown. Even through this whole gray part, it's 2 strands of white and 1 strand of gray. You can see right here where it goes from brown to more gray. That was not always the case. I had to do some tearing back in this because I wanted the fade to look right. And so I got like a good chunk of the way down the sweater the first time, and I'll put a picture of what it looked like in so you can see kind of like the before and after version, but the fade wasn't as nice. It wasn't working. So I ripped a ton of it back and kind of reworked it a few times, but I ended up holding that white with 1 strand of gray, and then I went to 2 strands of gray and 1 strand of white. And then it was too harsh for me to go directly from that gray into this brown. So then I went into my stash and I found this is actually 1 strand of white with 1 strand of Let Lopi, which is left over from my Let Lopi socks. And Let Lopi is technically the thickness of 2 Plotu Lopis held together. Basically, it's just 2 Plotu Lopis plied together. So that's this middle color. And then I faded into the brown. And I think I'm a little bit annoyed that I started fading into the darkest brown. I went back to 2 strands of white and 1 strand of color, and I should have not done that. I realized pretty quickly that it didn't look right. So I faded it into 2 strands of brown and 1 strand of white, but I wish I had ripped that back. But at this point I had ripped this back too many times and I was annoyed and I didn't want to rip it back anymore. And I would say the blend looks a little better on the inside of the garment than it does on the outside, but still I think it's fine and it doesn't bother me enough to like rip back this amount of I-cord, which I'll get to in a second. But anyway, so this, there was another problem, is that most of this is with 3 different strands of yarn, like one white Hillesvåg, 1 white Briggs & Little, one colored Plotu Lopi. But I ran out of the white Hillesvåg like around here-ish, and I did 2 strands of the Briggs & Little, and the Briggs & Little is a more densely extruded unspun yarn than the Hillesvåg, and so it turned way thicker and it was way more white. And you'll see in this picture that I'm putting about why I needed to rip it back, because it was like kind of white and then it got brighter white and then I went to the darker color and the fade was not good. So that's why I ended up doing a larger band of this gray, 2 strands of gray, 1 strand of white. But anyway, then, so this is all with Plotu Lopi. This is the Briggs & Little kind of gray color. This is Let Lopi. This is actually 2 different browns. The warmer brown is Plotu Lopi, and then I ran out of the brown Plotu Lopi kind of towards the end. And so this is actually that brown Briggs & Little that I bought a couple months ago. I brought some brown Briggs & Little unspun that's a little bit of a darker brown than the Plotu Lopi, but I think the fade is really nice. And it's like brown, almost black. So I think it looks really good overall. I'm really happy with it. And then the part that took the longest and that was the most exhausting was the I-cord. So you do the I-cord armholes. Applied I-cord is probably my least favorite knitting skill. Honestly, I would almost rather knit another half and half triangles wrap than do this much applied I-cord ever again. Because I had to do the whole applied, you have to pick up the stitches and then it's just like moving the stitches back and forth between the needles is exhausting. It's terrible. But I did the armholes, and then you have to do basically the entire edge of this vest. So I started in the middle back and I picked up stitches all the way around this entire, like this is how many stitches I was having to pick up. And I had to do it in batches. Like I didn't have a needle that was long enough to pick up all the stitches. So I had to like cut my yarn, and it's a whole thing. But all the ends are woven in now, but you can see like I would basically pick up like all of these stitches and then cut the yarn and then do the I-cord. I don't know why I'm going into so much detail, but I would like knit down to here with the I-cord. Like I had run out of stitches. So then I would take the yarn from the other end of the yarn ball, pick up more stitches, and then continue knitting so that there was no like obvious break in the I-cord. It was just a break in the yarn I was using to pick up the stitches, so I could just kind of knot that well and then weave in the ends. But anyway, I had to do like 3 or 4 different pickups around the entire body. I was stressed the whole time that I was going to run out of yarn because it was scrap yarn and I didn't know how much I had. I don't know what yarn this is. I bought it at a thrift store with no label on it, and it was like already caked up and everything. So I have no idea what yarn this is or what yardage it has. So I was worried the whole time I was gonna run a yarn. And then I finished the whole thing with enough yarn, and I did the ties, and I was like worried I was gonna have enough yarn for the ties. I ended up having plenty. I actually have a little bit left over, probably like 10 grams left over. But all that to say, it was a little bit of a stressful experience, and the I-cord took me like multiple days, but turned out so cute in the end. That's the other thing. That's the other thing. I feel like it's so hard to get your stitch pickup ratio right for I-cord. I was watching James N. Watts on his podcast the other day, and he was talking about this, and I was like, I resonate with you because I just went through this experience. That I-cord tension is really unique to every knitter, and it's really difficult to get the ratios right. And I was finding it especially tricky around these like curved parts. So if you can see, the front of this has like a curve on it, and I'm not sure you can see as well with the bow tied, but there's also a curve, or this, here, I'll untie the bow so you can see. But this has a curve to it as well. And I had to like rip back a couple of times to get the, like around the armholes. It was the same thing. Like I would adjust my pickup ratio around those curved sections so that it wouldn't get scrunched in too tight. And I think even one of these sides, I got like 80% done. I was like, I'm not ripping back again. But one of them still feels like it's maybe a little bit too tight. And like the fabric of the actual fabric is kind of almost like puckering out. Like if it was laying flat, it's kind of like convex. Because of the pickup rates, I'm sure it's all in my head. And it's fine now that I've blocked it. I like kind of pulled aggressively on the I-cord to get everything to lay nicely. But it was stressful. It was very stressful. Yeah, also I was like basically out of yarn by the time I got to the bottom. I was all out of white unspun. So I think this curve is supposed to go a little bit longer, but I had to stop like 2 or 3 rows early because I didn't have any more yarn. So I think this curve is supposed to be a little bit more graceful, but it's a little bit sharp here at the bottom because I ran out of yarn and I was like, I'm done with this. But anyway, all that to say, I'm really happy with this finished product. I think it's very cute, and I also think it's pretty versatile. Like I was wearing it after the day I finished it this last week. I finished it like on a Tuesday, and then I was working from home and I just put it on. When I'm working from home, I'm generally wearing like sweatpants and a sweatshirt. I just put it on over my sweatshirt, and it made me feel like so chic. And it's very warm because it's unspun yarn, and it's 3 strands of unspun yarn, so it's nice and thick and warm. And it's cute, and I really like it. I think it turned out so great. I also want to shout out, when I was making the moonset pullover, I've done so much applied I-cord lately. When I was doing the moonset pullover, there's a video support link in that pattern for a good I-cord grafting technique. And it's not Ozetta's video, so I feel fine sharing it, but I'll share it below, of a way to more seamlessly graft your I-cords together, and I really like it. So I'll put it below for you if you are also in an I-cord saga and you need to seamlessly graft your I-cords together at the end. So yes, all that to say, here she is. I think she's beautiful. It was a great way to use up scraps. I was worried the whole time that I was gonna have to buy yarn for it, and I really didn't want to, but I didn't end up having to. This is all scraps, all from, well, minus this like very last inch at the bottom where I like kind of had to dip into some yarn that I didn't really want to dip into, but it's all from stash. I didn't have to buy anything for this. I think it looks really cute. I think you should all make it. You could make it like really springy if you went for some more bright colors. You can make it more fall, more like cottagecore if you go for my colors. So anyway, I loved it. It was super fun. It was very like for chunky. It was, I think it's on like size 6mm needles, so it was chunky. It knit up generally pretty quickly. It's garter stitch flat, so like pretty enjoyable. So yeah, overall I'm really happy with it. And it was a labor of love, but it was fun. So yes, that's my vest. Okay, now we'll move into works in progress, for which at the moment I only have 2 active whips because this was my 3rd active whip until just a couple days ago. And I'm trying to get through some of these whips so I can cast things on, because I have so many things that I want to cast on, but I'm trying to pace myself because I also have a couple hibernating whips that I need to bring out of hibernation, which I'll talk to you about. So my first whip is this, which I think I had started last time. Maybe I was just talking about starting, but this is my Musselburgh hat, but it's not actually a Musselburgh hat because I didn't buy the pattern for the Musselburgh hat. I didn't use any pattern actually. So the Musselburgh hat is essentially this. It's like a long tube that you then fold inside of itself, and it's double thick, and then you can put a brim in it or not. It's a very popular pattern. It's lovely, but I just didn't feel like I needed to spend the $7 on it to do the thing. Because I think once you get to a certain point at your knitting skill level, like you can see something and be like, oh, I can probably figure out how to do that without having to buy the pattern. And I did. So I just did. It's top down. I just figured out the increases in the gauge, and however I measured some of my hats that I already have that I like to figure out what the circumference I liked was. And using my gauge, I kind of increased out to the width that I needed, the number of stitches I need, and then I just knit straight down. Obviously, if you don't want to do all that work or do all that math, then like buy the pattern. That's why the pattern is there. But I think there's also like merit to knowing how to do these things on your own. So if you don't agree with me, I'm happy to hear you out in the comments, but I don't feel like I stole anyone's intellectual property by doing this. Like there are many hats that are constructed in this different way. So I'm not really trying to defend myself. I'm just saying I didn't actually use the pattern for this. So this, okay, anyway, this is knit with one strand of whole skarn super soft in the color truffle, which I really like. And you can kind of see the color variation here. It's like basically a brown, but it also has these like blue and yellow and white heather kind of texture knitted throughout it. And it's a 50-gram ball, and I knit the whole thing. And you'll see this stitch marker here marks what is essentially the middle of the hat. So I knit the whole skarn until I ran out. And then I'm using this white yarn, which is a scrap from my stash, for the inside of the hat. So basically what it's going to look like when it's done is this is the outside of the hat, which I'm not sure I'm going to be able to show you this super well with the needles inside of it still. Anyway, this is the outside of the hat. And then I'm going to fold it up to make a brim and just have this white be on the inside. So the actual hat, when I'm wearing it, will look like this with the white on the inside. So yeah, that's what I wanted. I'm glad I had enough to be able to make that work. I didn't want to have a contrast brim, which some people do on this style of hat, where like basically you would fold it in half, and then when you would do like the whole, like half of 50% of the hat in the one color and 50% of the other. So when you fold the brim up, it's in the contrast color. That's not what I wanted, so that's not what I'm doing. It's gonna look like this. It's gonna be very cute. It's gonna be great. I'm very excited about the whole hullabaloo. So yeah, it's gonna look more or less like this when it's done. And so this is the halfway mark. I'm probably about 65% of the way done with this. I'm knitting it with a fingering weight yarn on 3mm needles. I will not tell you how many stitches I did, because if you want to make this, I recommend that you buy the Musselburgh hat pattern, but I figured it out on my own, and that's fine. So I'm just knitting it with fingering weight yarn on 3mm needles to a size that works for my head, my preference. And yeah, this is a merino silk blend that is a reclaimed yarn. I knit a whole sweater out of it in 2021. I have it right here actually. This is the Lupinus sweater by Jules Coco. And I knit it a couple years ago. I don't actually wear this, so I'm gonna give this to my mother-in-law because I think she would really like it. But the whole body is this merino silk held double, and then I had quite a bit of it left over. And it was a pretty similar thickness to the super soft, so it didn't change my gauge at all when I went from one yarn to the other yarn. And it's softer than the super soft, so it'll feel really good against my head and it won't be itchy. So yeah, I'm just gonna keep knitting, knitting, knitting away, and hopefully I'll have enough yarn to finish this with just the two colors, but if I don't, I can just use another scrap to do like the very top decreases of the hat. So yeah, that's where I'm at on this. I'm just chugging away. This is my like commute knitting, because it's just stockinette in the round forever. Yeah, it's very nice. It's fun. Hopefully I'll finish this before too long, and maybe I'll be able to wear it once or twice before it gets too warm for hats. But yeah, that's my top down double layered hat. Okay, my last work in progress you haven't seen before, but I have spoken about. And I need your advice on this. So this is my Marseille sweater by PETITEKNIT. Hold on, let me just, it's a little bit in a kind of a tangle right now. So let me unroll the bottom hem. Here it is. It's looking so cute. So I'm using Briggs & Little, not Regal, Heritage. I think this is Regal, Briggs & Little Regal, which is the like light. So there's Briggs & Little Regal and Briggs & Little Heritage. They're both 2-ply, but one is more of like a DK-ish light worsted, and one of them is more of like a traditional heavier worsted Aran kind of weight. This is the lighter one, which I'm pretty sure is Regal. and it's in the color Fur Green. And I'm about, so the body of the Marseille sweater has 4 white stripes on it, and I'm about probably a couple rows away from doing the last stripe. So I'm a good chunk of the way through the body. I'm most of the way through the body, but I just ended a ball of yarn, so I wanted to do the neckband. And I must say, this is what I want your advice about. I feel like I have too many stitches for the neckband. So I picked up a few less actually than what's recommended in the pattern, but it just seems like too many. Like, it just seems like there's gonna be a lot of neckband and maybe too much. So I know a lot of people have knit this pattern. So if you have knit this pattern before, did you pick up the number of stitches or close to the number of stitches recommended for the neckband, or did you do fewer? Because it just seems like a lot. I don't know if I'm being paranoid, but I don't really want to have to rip. It's a folded neckband, and I'm like almost about to do the fold row. Like I'm actually, I'm halfway through this collar. So I'm trying to decide if it's too many stitches and if I should rip it back and re-pick up and re-knit, or if it's fine. So let me know what you think. But anyway, this is the Marseille sweater from PETITEKNIT. I'm knitting it in the size medium, which is the size that I always knit for PETITEKNIT. It does have a lot of positive ease. Like, it's gonna be quite oversized, which I think is fine. I like my sweaters that way. I find them cozier that way when it's cold outside. And yeah, I would say my rowing out is not too bad. I think this yarn does a good job of hiding it. You can see it a little bit more, and maybe not in this light, but there's a little bit of more obvious rowing out here. But I think it looks okay on the front. I feel like for me, rowing out really depends on the yarn that I'm using more than anything else, more than the gauge or anything, although I definitely row out more on a larger needle size. It just really ends up depending on the yarn, I think, because I didn't really have any rowing out issues when I was doing my moonset pullover, but I'm having more rowing out issues on this sweater. But it's fine. I'm not upset about it. It kind of blends in with the rustic nature of this yarn. It's a 2-ply woolen spun. It's really stretchy, like really elastic. I like this yarn a lot. It's not terribly rustic, I would say. It's like a good introductory rustic, although there are definitely people that would probably find this prickly. I think it's a great yarn. I think it's a good price for what you get. It's like very affordable. I ordered this from Maritime Family Fiber. I think it was like $8 for 100 grams. It's very affordable. So yeah, I'm on my 3rd skein of 5, although maybe I thought I had 6, but I only see 2 more in my drawer. So we'll figure that out later. But my 3rd skein of 5, and that hopefully will be enough. I think I can finish the neckline and the body probably with this, and that will give me 1 skein each for the sleeves, which should be more than enough, because I did most of the yoke with 1 and then a good chunk of the body with the 2nd. The white helps it go a little bit longer. I will say I'm using kind of like a scrap white yarn, and it's definitely, it's a worsted spun. So it's just like a little bit, it's not as thick and it's not as bouncy as the green yarn. So the tension is a little bit different between the two, between the green and the white, but it should block out and be fine. So yeah, I'm really happy with the way it looks. I think it's super cute. I love the green and the white. So yeah, I'm gonna keep working away on this. I put it down for a little while after I finished the yoke. But I've done like this much of the body in the past couple of days, honestly, and I'm liking it much more. I'm excited to get onto the sleeves, because I feel like for me, I love doing the yoke of a sweater, and then after I either join the body or split for sleeves, I'm like, I never want to look at this again, because I just hate stockinette in the round. I find it so boring and so uninspiring. So I always have to kind of like give it a little rest period before I can come back to it after that happens. And then once I finish the body, it's like, whew, from there, I can do the sleeves super fast. So I'm just hoping to get myself to that sleeve stage pretty soon. I'm going on like kind of a road trippy weekend away this upcoming weekend with my parents, and I'm really excited about it, and I'll have a good amount of car knitting time. So if I can get the body done by the weekend, then maybe I can do at least 1 sleeve the weekend, and then the 2nd sleeve the week after that. Maybe I can wear this once or twice before it gets too warm. So yeah, that's my Marseille sweater. Let me know what you think about the neckband. I don't know, like PETITEKNIT, she wouldn't steer me wrong, but it just seems like a lot of stitches. It's just gonna stand up quite a lot, which, you know, that's like the look that's in the photos, so I'm not surprised by it. But yeah, one other thing actually that I want to talk about, if you have any tips. So you can see my neckband, my ribbing, that my knit stitches are really wide. And on the wrong side, I don't have that issue. And I always my ribbing looks a little messy and I don't love it. So if you have any tips for tightening up the ribbing so that my knit stitches are kind of like on the inside, they're just a little bit tighter than they are on the outside. They're just really wide. If you have any tips for fixing that, let me know. I don't want to do twisted rib. I like the look of regular rib more than twisted rib, but it's just not looking super neat. I also tried the Russian purling method where you like wrap your yarn the other way to get the pearls to tighten up a little bit. That's not really helping because the issue is with the knit columns, not the purl columns. So if you have any recs for making beautiful, clean ribbing, also feel free to drop that below because I would love any tips that you have. Okay, that's it for today for works in progress. Actually, I did want to show you really quick. This is a whip that I'm going to bring out of hibernation. This is the Magnolia top, which is from Rowan. It's I'll put a picture of it, but it's like a button down shirt that I started working on last spring, and it's knit flat, fingering weight yarn knit flat. So not the most enjoyable process because it's knitting and purling and it's seamed, which I'm not jazzed about that whole experience. Oh geez, I just noticed a mistake. But anyway, I have most of this front piece done, and then this is the back piece that I was working on before I gave up. I'm also worried that I'm gonna run out of yarn and not have enough yarn to make it long sleeve, so I may have to go for a short sleeve, which is not the vision I have in my head, but I can't find this yarn for sale anywhere. This is Drops Love You 7, which is a fingering weight cotton yarn. I bought this last spring in Denmark at a lovely little yarn store, but I'm worried that I'm gonna run out and it's not for sale on Wool Warehouse anymore. So that's a problem. But I don't know. If I run out of yarn, I may just do it short sleeve. But anyway, this is the back panel. I probably have like 10 or 15 more centimeters to go on the back. It's just not very interesting knitting. So I need to kind of motivate myself to keep working on this. But I'm bringing it back out of hibernation because I would like to finish it this year and wear it this spring, summer time. So bringing that out and telling you to hold me accountable that I need to at least show you some progress on that for next month. Let's just set a goal here while we're talking to each other. I will have the back panel done by the end of April. I'm saying it, not holding myself to it, but it's a goal. It's nice to have a goal and have a goal set. So yes. Okay, let's do one quick acquisition and then we can move on to plans. So I was at an estate sale nearby the other day, a couple weeks ago, and I found this yarn for very cheap, so I bought it. This is Skacel Merino Lace, which is a lace weight merino wool. This is 1,375 yards, which is probably about 1,200 meters for 100 grams. So it's a very, very fine lace weight. Like that is basically the thickness of like sewing thread. But it was $2 for this color, which is a full skein, and then this color, which is probably like 40 grams. It's a little less than a full skein. So I bought it. I figured I could use it in place of like a mohair if I wanted to, either holding 1 or 2 strands of this just to kind of thicken up something that I'm working on. I don't know. It's really nice and squishy, and it was $2 for these, so I bought it. It's my hoarding tendencies kicking in, but I don't know. I thought it was interesting and I thought it could be useful. So yeah, I'm just gonna show that to you. If you have ever heard of it or used it before, let me know. Okay, talking about plans. So I have a lot of things that I want to cast on right now. My queue is looking juicy and I'm excited to cast things on, but I also need to finish up some of the stuff I have going, which I also have my anemone sweater in hibernation, which is this sweater. I don't think I'm gonna be working on it anytime soon. I'm just not really in the mood for color work right now, and I'm at a point where it's like kind of tricky. I need to think about it a little bit, and I'm just not ready for that. So I think that one's gonna be in hibernation maybe until the fall. But I have to finish my Marseille sweater, and I have to finish my hat, and I have to work on my magnolia, and then I have a couple other kind of spring summery things I want to work on. So the first one that I'm really excited to cast on is the Sunday tee, which, by the way, I want to say thank you to a very kind viewer of mine who bought me the pattern. If you know who you are. Thank you so much. It was very thoughtful of you and very kind, and I really appreciate it. She sent me the pattern as a gift on Ravelry, which was so nice. And I'm so excited to cast it on. I'm going to knit it in the rose quartz color of Pearl Soho linen quill. My mom bought me 2 skeins of linen quill for Christmas in 2021, and I really want to use it for this. I think it would be a nice Seattle summer top because it's got wool, but it also has linen and it also has alpaca, so I think it'll be nice. I have not seen anyone make this top in linen quill, but I think the yarn would work great for it, and I'm really excited. I think the color will be nice. It's just a lot of stockinette on really small needles, but I really want the finished product. So that's something I really want to cast on soon. I do still want to make the Mia sweater by CHERYL MOKHTARI, which I really like a lot, and I have a cone of Angora wool that I want to use for it. But I have not cast that on yet. I also really want to make the Anker summer shirt by PETITEKNIT in a cotton linen yarn that I have in stash, which I have that pattern already. I want to make the Luna tee, which I talked to you a little bit earlier about with this. And then if you follow me on Instagram, which if you don't, you should, this is my handle. If you follow me, if you try to follow my account that has my name, that's my private and personal account, so I probably will not accept your follow request if you try to follow me over there. If you want to follow me for knitting related content on Instagram, this is where you'll find me. But anyway, I put on there a couple weeks ago that I have this beautiful green mohair that I think I showed you last time that I want to use to make a sweater, and I want to hold 2 strands of it together. And I was saying last time that I was thinking I was going to do the Nigroom sweater square neck, but I'm still just not, that doesn't sit right with me. So I was looking again on Ravelry the other day, and I found this beautiful sweater, which is called the Spring Rain sweater by Git Studio. And I went to buy it, and the shop has closed. The designer is no longer selling her patterns, and I am devastated because this was like the perfect sweater. This was exactly what I wanted. I have really been intrigued by the little eyelets lately. I just think they're very beautiful. I tried to make a scarf pattern kind of like this, just like tried to freestyle one with the little eyelets, and I couldn't figure it out. But I really like the look of those little eyelets, and so I wanted to make this sweater, and the pattern is sold out, or is like not for sale anymore, and I'm devastated. So if you have the pattern, or if you know someone who has the pattern, and would be willing to share it with me, I'm happy to cover the cost of that. I don't know what the etiquette is for this kind of situation. The designer has made it very clear that she's not interested in selling her patterns, so like please don't message her and ask her for them. But I just really like this pattern. It's like exactly what I wanted at the gauge that I wanted. So I think if I can't find a copy of the pattern, which I think is pretty unlikely, I think I'm gonna have to just try and make it up myself. So the Musso sweater from Espace Tricot is a very similar construction, but it doesn't have the eyelets. So I think I'm just gonna have to figure out how to do the eyelets on my own and use the Musso pattern to do the eyelets on this. The problem is that the Musso is at a slightly larger gauge. Musso is at a 19 stitch gauge on 5mm needles, and this Spring Rain sweater was at a 21 stitch gauge on 4mm needles, which is more of the gauge that I think I would prefer. So I don't know if I'm gonna have to try and like pattern hack the Musso to make it at a tighter gauge and put the eyelets. I'm just feeling, I don't know. I'm just not, I just really wanted to buy this pattern and knit it because as much as I respect people who like are excited to self-draft their things, like I can understand that, and sometimes I do want to do that. Kind of like with the hat that I'm making, like I saw an idea and it excited me and I figured out that I could do it by myself at a smaller scale. I'm not quite ready to do that on a sweater yet, and there's just something very satisfying. And I know Caroline from Caroline's Knits has said this as well in the past. It's just like sometimes you just want to buy the instructions and follow the instructions and get what you know you want without having to do a bunch of like thinking about it or ripping back, because I don't want to have to do a bunch of frogging in 2 strands of mohair, you know? So at the moment, I'm feeling a little frustrated about that. Obviously not the designer's fault. Like, you're welcome to close your shop whenever you want. That's your right. But I wish she would take her patterns off of Ravelry at least, so I wouldn't be taunted by this beautiful sweater that I really want to make that's perfect. So I'm going to sit on that for a little while, maybe do some swatching, maybe just zoom in on the pictures really closely and like try and figure out the spacing of the droplets, the little eyelet rain droplets, because they're staggered from each other, and they're also like they get wider, farther and farther apart as you go down the sweater. It's beautiful. So beautiful. I love this pattern, and I wish I could buy it. I would be so happy to buy it if I could, but I can't. So yeah, I'm gonna have to figure it out on my own or just settle for something else. So if you know of another pattern like this, please send it to me. I will buy it for you and me both. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now. That's my plans for the future. I'm excited to do some spring summery knitting. I really want to make a pair of shorts this springy summery time. I know it was like kind of a big trend at the end of summer last year, knitted shorts. Laura from Penrose Knits made a really cute pair, and Cat Weaver made a really cute pair as well. And they just look really comfy and like cozy loungewear. So I'm excited for spring and summer knitting in full swing. Someone commented under one of my recent videos and asked for me to do like a video roundup of springy summery patterns. If that's something you'd be interested in, I'd be happy to put that together for you. Let me know in the comments down below. But yeah, that's my plans for the time being. And so yeah, that's probably it for today. I feel like I've talked for a very long time now. I do feel better, so thank you all for cheering me up. Spring is very hard for me. It has been for a very long time. It's just not a great season. Like I think I have a really hard time transitioning from the like cozy months where no one goes outside to like the summery months where everyone is outside and I'm expected to leave my house because I don't like doing that. And it's just really difficult for me. It always has been, mental health wise. So thank you for letting me talk to you for like an hour, because this has really helped cheer me up and make me feel a little more chipper. I hope that I just really appreciate having people to talk to about knitting and having people that watch me talk about knitting. So thank you all for being here. It's really lovely to have you. I really appreciate you all very much. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Feel free to leave a comment on any of the topics that I'm soliciting feedback on, or anything else that you're interested in sharing about. And I hope that you have a lovely beginning of spring. April is a fun month for spring, and I hope it's lovely for you. And I hope that you're feeling well and happy and finding positive things to think about in this world that can not be so positive sometimes. So yeah, I wish you all the best, and I will see you again in a few weeks with another video.